Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I'm Hinobi Skilnover, Operations Specialist at Redwind Consulting, and I'll be hosting this event. Before we begin, for those who may not know, Redwind is a nonprofit organization that provides tribal technical assistance on a variety of programs, including but not limited to Tribal Grants Comprehensive, responding to urban natives, and elder abuse. This ranges from policy review via emails to site visits. If you're interested, you can contact me at hanovi@red-wind.net. That's HONOVI at red-wind.net. You can also visit our website at red-wind.net for additional information on services we provide, as well as upcoming events and resources such as handouts and guidebooks that you can download. This presentation was brought to you in partnership with Redwind Consulting. This project is supported by grant number 15J OVW 21 GK 0228 TRIB, awarded by the Office on Violence Against Women, U.S. Department of Justice. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this publication, program, and exhibition are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Justice. This event does have captioning, which you'll need to manually turn on from the menu. If you have any questions or comments, you can put them into the chat box or the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, or you can click the hand icon. You'll all be muted, so if you see the hand, we can then unmute you so that you can ask your question verbally. If there are any tech issues, you can send a private message to me and we'll try to get resolved. And joining us today is Daryl Olson, who I will now turn it over to.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daryl Olson, and I am the Associate Director at the American Indian Community Housing Organization, or throughout this webinar, I will refer to it as AICHO for short. AICHO was started in 1993, and it was the vision of a group of Indigenous women who wanted a response to the social injustices that were in fact affecting the Indigenous community here in Duluth, Minnesota. At that time, there was no culturally specific services or resources in our community, and there wasn't a place for folks to gather in the community. So when AICHO started, we started with our domestic violence shelter, Dabanugan, and I'll talk a little bit about that during this presentation. But for the focus today, my focus is going to be on our Gimaajii Mino Bimaadizimin program, which is our permanent supportive housing program in Duluth, Minnesota. It is the newest development that we have. Gimaajii opened its doors in 2012, and at that time we had over 400 people on our waiting list needing housing. We have 29 units, everything from efficiencies to 3 bedrooms, and I'll go into more detail throughout this presentation. Next slide, please. Before I get started and dig in with Gimaajii, I just want to share a little bit about myself. I have been here with AICHO. I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary in September. I started at AICHO doing family and children's services back in 2013. And at that time, we really didn't have children's or youth programming. It was kind of just as staff were able to, connecting with the kids after school. And so my first couple of years here were really on developing youth programming within the agency and expanding services for our youth and our families at Gimaajii. I have done a variety of different roles here over the last 10 years, including providing technical assistance in a partnership with Redwind, or just technical assistance one-on-one with other tribal agencies, just to offer any support and learning that I have through my time here at AICHO. I've also done domestic violence and sexual assault trainings, policies and procedures, and over the last 5 years, the core role that I've had is more administration, but I'm a very hands-on director, so I like to be really, really involved with, supporting services, supporting tenants and participants, as well as community members coming in and kind of looking at the direction as AICHO moves forward. What are the other needs of our community? And we really depend on our community members to tell us, what are the greatest needs. When the pandemic hit, we pivoted a lot of programming to address the needs of the community, and we're always looking for feedback and input of what other services, programming, or resources our community members need. So Gimaajii, as I mentioned, opened in 2012. We have 29 units of housing for long-term homeless individuals and families. We are a housing first model. And what that means is exactly what it says. We house people first. There are no restrictions to eligibility, such as somebody needing to be sober in order to be eligible for programming, or be working with mental health services, or any sort of outside agency services. Along with Housing First is that all the services and supports are voluntary. So nobody is required to have case management services here or legal advocacy services, whether it's within our organization or outside in community organizations. So there is no limitation to that. And it's really about meeting the basic needs of folks that are coming out of homelessness first, and ensuring that they have food in the household, looking at once they've stably been housed here, making sure that they have the necessary household items that they need, or maybe it is getting children re-enrolled into the local school district and navigating, transportation, things like that. And then once folks have settled into housing, then we start to work on goal planning and case planning with them, of kind of where they're at, and we take their direction and lead with that. Our building has 24-hour front desk security or front desk staff, and that is for the safety and security of all the folks in our building. 80% of our participants are survivors of violence, both adults and children. And so security and safety is one of the highest priorities here at Gimaajii. This Gimaajii building that you see here is formerly the old Y. And it was originally an SR, single room occupancy, I'll try not to use acronyms, when we purchased the building. And it took us 5 years and $8 million to renovate it. So everything you see above that front door, all of that is our housing. However, within our building, we also have an American Indian Center. We have leasing offices for tribal partners, as well as community gathering space and social enterprise programming. We offer on-site support services, but again, it's voluntary. Nobody's required to do that. And what services that we don't offer on-site, we do refer out to community partners and agencies. The Gimaajii project is very unique because we had a diverse range of subsidies. So tenants only pay 30% of their income towards their rent, and the rest is covered either by a HUD subsidy, a Section 8 subsidy, or we have 5 units that the Fond du Lac Band has reserved for family households of their direct descendants. Next slide, please. Some of the on-site support services that we do offer include case management, and that's individualized, whether it's for the adult. Oftentimes our families are also looking for more support for the youth in programming. And while we don't have currently have a specific youth advocate, we have youth programming, and our youth programming works very closely with our case management in order to make sure that we have the necessary supports and services in place for all youth in the programming. We also provide mental health services through a partnership with Whiter. They provide mental health services to our participants through a direct referral process from our case management. We provide legal advocacy services through our domestic violence shelter, Daryl, and we provide legal advocacy not only for AICHO participants, but also for community members as well. To access children's programming, we have a variety of children's programming now. This picture that you see is our alley garden, and this was developed about 2 years ago. We also have a rooftop garden on site here, and this is part of our youth programming. Our children are the one who decide each year what we are going to harvest. They do the planting, They do all the gardening as well as the harvesting. And then they package a variety of different things from our garden to either put out on our community table, or they deliver it to elders in the building. And then our older youth, we have a program called the Gimaajii program. And I'll talk more during my presentation about that, but that's really for middle and high school youth. And that program is open to the community. So we serve middle and high school youth in the Duluth, St. Louis County and Carleton area. And they get opportunities to work with different food producers and artists. And they actually harvest stuff from our garden and create products to sell at local farmers markets, or they do pop-up markets here in our building, so that the youth can earn some income. We can bring some money back in to continue those Gimaajii activities and field trips. We do food programming and meals on site here through a partnership with Second Harvest Food Bank. We've had this partnership now about 9 years, shortly after I started here. And we're thankful that we get a food truck twice a week that pulls up in front of our building, and our staff get to pick what items that we want or what would be most beneficial to participants 2 times a week. And then we are allowed to order through their emergency food rescue once a month in bulk, a large order. And we use that to supplement our pantry on site here, so that as families are running low throughout the month, they can come down. We have a board in the lobby that will list all of the fresh food we have available, as well as frozen food. And then we keep stocked in our pantry canned goods and pasta and things like that. Common things that people, condiments and things that people may need or go through, as well as household items. Toilet paper, paper towels, feminine products, as well as hygiene products. One other on-site support service we have is grief and support groups. So we do that in partnership with community elders and leaders. We do different NA groups, AA groups, talking circles, as well as doing cultural activities and groups online and in person. And that was one thing that really changed with the pandemic, is we typically, AICHO sees about 10,000 people a year coming through our building for different programming, cultural activities, events, art shows, book signings. And we really shut down our doors to protect our participants as well as our staff. And so we started developing more programming online and offering that out to the larger community as well. So if you're ever curious, we have a big presence on Facebook, and we usually post all community open events there, as well as the registration links. So you can always look to there, or our AICHO website as well. Next slide, please. So AICHO, or Gimaajii, excuse me, was really, really designed in a trauma-informed way. And it wasn't just when we were thinking about services and programming, but it was really about the actual physical space as we were developing this project, and making sure that the physical space and the community spaces were a place that promoted healing and community and well-being, and a path to a good road. And we all know that it can be very damaging or triggering if you have certain colors and lighting. And so we really incorporated that into the design of the building, as well as the common spaces, and really implementing culturally relevant images and designs and language into our building spaces, and to help promote everyone's physical and mental well-being. And also, so when the community came in, this was a space that they could take some ownership in, a space that they could gather, that we could gather as a community. And also not just for the Indigenous community, but to invite other community members in to learn about our community members and what our needs are and how we do the work that we do and the way in which we do that. Next slide, please. So why I mentioned trauma-informed design is because it it makes an entire difference when you're looking at a project or a facility and how you organize it and create a welcoming, warm environment. So our front desk area is open. It's right as you walk into the building is our front desk. And it's wide open. There isn't glass around it. It's a very beautiful wooded front desk that surrounds the entire front desk staff, and case management offices behind. Our stairwells are very open, so there's clear lines of sight throughout the building. Trying to keep as many open doorways throughout the building as possible. And then looking at inside the unit, having, limited with bars in colors, big windows to let in natural sunlight, and then bringing in elements from nature, from our natural surroundings, and also from our culture. Next slide, please. So this is an image of one of our units. And I believe this one was a 3-bedroom unit, just looking at the photo. So like I had mentioned, we have efficiencies all the way to 3 bedrooms, and we have 3 different subsidies that fund the units. There are 3 units right now that are not subsidized. And so what we do is all those units are full, but what we did is we did some outreach and collaboration to find families that may have already had a voucher, but were having a hard time getting a landlord to rent to them. And that could have been because of past housing history or criminal behavior or criminal record. And then we also partnered with the public housing. They had some emergency housing vouchers. So we were able to get a single individual housing voucher that stays with her here in the facility or in the program. All of the units are renovated with updated appliances, and then we do not furnish the units. However, we assist with getting furnishings. So one thing we do before any move-in is we try to secure beds for everybody in the household and set those up with linen and pillows and all of that before they move in. And then our building manager is actually really, really great at networking and getting donations from universities, hotels, community members that he knows to get other furniture. So we try to store as much as we can, and that becomes an issue because we don't have a ton of space. But what I'll do is, if we have a vacant unit and we get, a table and a couple dressers, we'll set it up in those vacant units and already reserve that for the new move-ins. Or if we know somebody who's currently in programming, has said, oh, I could really use one of these. Once we get something in, we try to get it out to them as soon as possible. And then our service providers meet with tenants about 2 weeks after. They meet with them in between those 2 weeks, but they sit down and do the intake paperwork and kind of go over support services and what are their goals at about 2 weeks from move-in. And then at that point, we create a list of where we can get other furnishings, local places like the Damiano Center, Salvation Army, and then we coordinate to take them out there and help them acquire the rest of the things that they need for their home. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share this with you because this is something that is pretty exciting and new. As I had mentioned, Bimaadizimin was our first program. And we continue to run a 10-bed domestic violence shelter. However, we are in the final month. We have been building, for a year and a half, a larger shelter, and we will be increasing. It can be anywhere from 18 to 21 beds, just depending on how we set up each of the suites. And so with this new blueprint and development, we really took into account the past 3 years and the pandemic and how that affected social distancing and safety for survivors. And so we created units that had a sleeping space, but as well as like a living space, so that mom could put the kids to bed and then have a space that was, quiet, still centrally located next to the sleeping quarters, but where she could, just relax, watch TV, a couch, visit with other participants if they chose. And so we really tried to design it to be more intimate and personal, and so that it was their own space. As I had mentioned before, we do have legal advocacy services, so our advocates work with any survivors of violence, sexual assault, stalking. They can help with protection orders, advocating within the courts, transporting to any type of appointments, as well as writing OFPs and harassment orders. A lot of times our advocates, our legal advocate also works with custody or child protection cases as well, and just making sure that the victim is aware of their rights and the resources available to them, and has that connection between law enforcement, the legal system, and then their safety within shelter. We do provide additional 6 months of ongoing support once someone leaves our shelter. And if they're an outreach person, we do that as well. So just because they've worked with outreach for a few months, we'll follow them as long as needed. Oh, my pictures are sideways. Well, so this is the Dr. Robert Paulus Cultural Center. And as I had mentioned, the main building that Gimaajii is in is also an American Indian Center. Now, when we first purchased this building, the Y was not going to sell us the second part. So it's actually 2 different addresses, but they're connected. And then shortly after that, they decided to sell us. This was formerly called Trepanier Hall, and it was a large auditorium. And so we purchased that, and we renamed it in 2017 after Dr. Robert Paulus, who was extremely instrumental in advocating with Minnesota Housing for AICHO to receive the remaining funding for our development, as well as just advocating within the local county and city about why this was needed, why an American Indian Center was so important to this community, and the benefits that it would offer. Dr. Robert Paulus donated additional $10,000 of his own money to for this development as well. Unfortunately, Dr. Robert Paulus passed away a few years ago. However, his wife, Linda Paulus, still regularly visits here and checks in with us and is a great supporter and community member, encouraging our work and supporting it in whatever way she can. So this is where we host most of our community events, our talking circles. And I just listed a few things that we've done. We've done films and art shows. We're getting ready right now for our Brave Art showcase, which is where we reach out to middle and high school youth and ask them to create a piece of artwork that describes or depicts what it means to be brave. We provide them with all the materials that they need in order to create the artwork, and it could be, a painting, it could be beadwork. It's really up to the youth on what they want to design. And then we do a very large opening for them. For their art show, we do a proclamation in the Paulus Center. And then folks they're able to sell their work if they want to. And then all the proceeds go directly back to the youth for their work. We do staff and community trainings. Just you name it, we've done it. We've done weddings, baby showers. We also offer this space out to the community. So if community members are looking for a space to have a meeting or to do a baby shower, or just to gather for a family reunion, we do offer the space, and people can rent it out throughout the week or the weekends, as long as it's not in use for AICHO programming. And we do try to kind of map out each month. Our art shows are usually developed and planned out a year in advance, so that we are able to take more community requests to use our space. The Dr. Robert Paulus Cultural Center is also where we do all of our vaccine and testing through our current partnership with Minnesota Department of Health. We have been a COVID community coordinator since the pandemic started, and we offer vaccine clinics twice a month on site here for the community members. We offer testing, and We always have testing kits available as well as masks. And then each clinic, we also, we do a variety. We've done flu clinics. We just did an HIV and Hep C testing event in partnership with St. Louis County Public Health. So all of these spaces are able to be utilized by our partners as well. And we do have additional community spaces, which you'll see some pictures throughout the rest of this webinar. So if a community member, has a meeting and they don't feel like going to the county building to meet with their social workers, they're always welcome to come here. We allow, it's a place where people can smudge when they come in. It's more intimate and welcoming. We have food on site here. We have a children's room. So if it's a family meeting with social workers, there's a place for kiddos to play while the parents are meeting with them. And it's just a lot more welcoming and comfortable for our community members. Next slide, please. So this is just a few more images, and I use a lot of images in on these slides because I really want to capture and showcase for you guys what our space looks like. And it's really, really hard to imagine or picture all the diverse range of programming without physically seeing the space. So I invite anyone who's on this webinar, if you're ever in the area or in the region, please reach out. I'd love to show you our space and our different programming, and more than welcome to come by and visit. So we have a full gymnasium here in the building as well. And we use that obviously for our youth programming. But the gym is open to the community as well as AICHO tenants every day till 10 p.m. We do set some rules and boundaries with the youth. So if they're 12 or under, they can't be down there without supervision. And, it's difficult sometimes for parents to be able to juggle, being down there to supervise them. So we started implementing evenings and afternoons on the weekends where we have a couple gym activity staff that will come in and do 2 hours of open gym and buzz all the kids and let them know during the week and then also on the weekends as well. This picture in the lower left-hand corner, that is our lobby area. So that's right when you walk in the front door, you're met by our front desk staff, and then there's a living space in there for folks to sit and wait for appointments, or a lot of times just folks coming in to warm up, grab a cup of coffee, and just rest for a little bit, or connect with our front desk staff for resources and supports. The middle picture on top, that is Dr. Robert Paulus, and that was his ceremony of renaming the center after him. We have a full-size commercial kitchen on site here for food programming. And that's food programming that we do for tenants, but our Ginoan youth also use our kitchen to do all their product making to sell at local farmers markets. And then the picture on the very far right is another activity. So this was a storytelling activity where we invited the community members in, and everyone brought their blankets and stuff in, and it was a big cultural event and storytelling that we held here. So these are just a few of our other community spaces that we have on site here. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Again, there's our lobby area. I think that was a candid shot with some of our staff. Our front desk staff, we did put up these little plastic barriers during the pandemic that hung from the ceiling for protection, but we don't have those up any longer. And you notice, right when you come in, it's clear, visual sight of the front desk. The front desk can see everything happening in the lobby. And then they have full security cameras behind the front desk to monitor the common spaces as well as the hallways up on the unit floors. This is the picture in the right lower corner. This is a group of our Ginoan youth and one of their pop-up shops. One of the things they make all the time is they'll do salsa from stuff they harvest from the garden. And then the little white bottles are worm juice. So we actually have a worm bin on site here, and we produce our own worm juice, which is great for fertilizing. And then our youth actually process it and sell it. And this year they actually were asked by a local co-op, Whole Foods co-op, if they could start selling their worm juice there to the community. So these entrepreneur programs have really expanded. The Gimaajii program has only been around, we're on our third year now. So it's the newest program, newest youth program. And then the far left corner, this is our conference room. And I believe this was a board meeting or a staff meeting with one of ours. But the conference room is also available for people to utilize and use and rent the space out or just have a meeting here. Next slide, please. A few more images, really just showcasing the Paulus Center and the space, the size of it. These are a variety of different events and art shows that we put on. This space is also really utilized for Gimaajii specific programming. So we do a tenant dinner every month, and we either choose a different activity like bingo, or we might do a movie. We provide a meal, and then we also do an incentive. So early on, we learned, early on we had very minimal participants paying rent on time. And we had an outside property management agency when I started here. And it really didn't align with our vision and our mission and how we do our work. And so after quite a few years, we finally got approval to take over some of the permanent supportive housing program. On top of being the associate director here, I am also the property manager. And so I learned very early on the ins and outs within property management, and we started as a team to create what are the barriers here. And one of the issues with the outside agency was that we weren't informed if tenants didn't pay rent. So they might get a letter in the mail from the property management, but we at AICHO didn't know that they were falling behind. And so it was really hard for us to be proactive or address it on not knowing. And sometimes people would be 3-4 months behind. And at that point, it's very hard to secure financial assistance when you're thousands of dollars behind. And within using emergency assistance through the local county, you can only use it once every 18 months. And we thought, well, this is silly if people are using that funding and that resource for $50 in back due rent, when they can't use it again for another 18 months. So part of taking on property management, and one of the solutions to rent is we started doing these dinners and having a meal and an incentive to pay your rent. So every month, whoever pays their rent on time, their name goes into a drawing, and we give away different things like vacuums, household items, paintings or artwork from our gift shop, gift cards to local grocery store, or just a Visa gift card. Since we started doing that, on average, we have about 90% of the folks in programming that are paying their rent on time. The other unique thing is that we do allow visitors here in the building. However, if somebody has not paid their rent or has a visitor violation or a lease violation, they go on a no visit list. So people are very motivated to pay their rent on time in order to continue to have visitors as well as overnight. Next slide, please. Again, just more of our space. This is our gymnasium. We built a rock climbing wall during the pandemic for our little folks. And then Sam Zimmerman is one of the artists that we work with through our Indigenous First Gift Shop. And he came in, and over the course of a couple of weeks, he painted a mural with our youth and programming. And this photo on the bottom right, this is from the Indigenous Food Expo that AICHO hosted a few years back, where the whole building wide, we had different food producers showcasing and doing food demos, and just doing a lot of food sovereignty work. And so this is Sean Sherman there doing one of the food demos in our gymnasium back at that food expo. I kind of got a little ahead of myself with this, but I wanted to touch more on our policies or our rules in regards to visitors. So we are a very secure building. We have an intercom system in our entryway that if a visitor comes in and they want to get a hold of a tenant, they have to know the tenant's apartment number, and they have to dial up to them. We do not give out any information. We do not confirm or deny if somebody lives here. And so that's the way for community members to get a hold of them if they come in to visit. And visitors are not allowed to walk unescorted throughout the building. The tenant and an adult tenant, we don't allow children to escort, but an adult tenant has to come down to the front desk. They sign their visitor in with our front desk staff, and then they escort them back up to their apartment. Same goes when they leave. They have to bring them all the way down to the lobby and escort them out. And that is for the overall safety of everybody here in this building. And we also monitor everybody who's in the building in case of an emergency, so that we know how many people are here and how many people we need to evacuate or locate in case of a fire or any other medical emergency. On top of that, a visitor must have an ID on file. It can be a state or a tribal ID, but it has to be on file in our system, or they have to present one the first time they come to visit. If they do not have an ID, like an actual physical picture ID, they are not allowed to go up to the tenant units. They have to only visit in common areas. You know, they can visit in the lobby, they could use the gym to visit, or the conference room, but we do not allow visitors without IDs to go up to the tenant floors at any given time. And our doors are open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Our doors are open, and then at 5, it's locked. So the only way to get into the building is for front desk staff to physically buzz you into the building. And that includes tenants. Tenants do not have a key to the very front door, the security door. So they just have to buzz the intercom, and staff can buzz them in to the building. Next slide, please. This is some more of our Mino program in our youth, creating different products and learning from different food producers. Some of this was during the expo, where we had different food producers doing demos and teaching our kids. And then over on the right-hand side was our youth actually getting prepared with making their different products to sell at markets. As you see, we have kids of all ages participating in programming. We have youth, we have a newborn all the way up to age 18 currently living in the building. We have on average about 35 to 45 kids in programming or in living in Gimaajii at any given time. And similar adults, maybe a little less, about 30 to 35 adults who are living here. Next slide, please. Children's programming. So I'll go in a little bit more to detail with this. We do after school programming for our youth every day after school. So usually they come in, they get a snack right at the front desk. They'll go check in with their parents or guardians, and then they'll come back down for an activity with our youth staff. We do different support groups and parenting groups to build child-parent relationships and offering other services that we may not have on site here. A lot of cultural activities and learning. So we bring in, we do drumming monthly here in the building. We have a beading class for our youth that's done once every other week. Just a variety of different things. We just started October, we started developing more programming for our really little, like early, like preschool age kids. And so now once a week they do a cultural activity, and we contract with different artists or community members to provide the activity on site here, and then we compensate them for their knowledge and time. And then we also have one for our middle kind of elementary ed school, our elementary age students. Then we do the opposite week, we'll do an activity with them. And, you know, it could be different authors or a craft activity. One of our case managers here, she is an amazing beader, and she sells some of her work in our gift shop. So she does a beading class with our youth once a week on site here after hours, just to kind of teach them. Next slide, please. Just more youth activities. This middle picture, this was down at Minnesota Housing's office. So every year we do AICHO calendar to raise discretionary funds for programming and services. And this was the first year, and we did it, it's called Through Our Eyes, and it was based on, it was all of our youth. And our youth worked with an organization called In Progress out of the metro area, Twin Cities. And they did a 2-week-long workshop learning about photography and editing and working with a variety of different programming to edit their photos and then to create different sayings or verbiage on there. And so all of these photos behind this young woman were taken by youth in programming, and there's specific quotes written on them that came directly from the youth. And so this went into our calendar, and then we created clay prints of all of the photos, and each youth or family got a photo. And then we created an actual exhibit that went down to Minnesota Housing and has since then has traveled to other places. And then we have them all on site here as well. And so this one I really, really love because it was youth driven. I mean, these photos are absolutely incredible. And each of them took such pride and ownership in taking photos of one another, but also bringing it back to their culture and their teachings and their history, and talking about, what is the importance of water? What is the importance of nature? And it was just really, really empowering to see them do this. This young woman who's in the middle picture, she actually is one of our mentors now in our Gimaajii program. She is in high school now. And so she now is helping our younger ones who are starting in programming to learn and to be comfortable. And she does a lot of the speaking engagements for our Gimaajii and our youth programming. Next slide, please. All right, our urban garden. So we have 2 gardens. One is in the back alley behind our building, and the other one is on our rooftop. So the picture right in the middle with our elder and her granddaughter, this is actually on our roof. And we started with very small boxes from the Horticultural Society. And we quickly realized that it was not going to be enough grow room and space. And so these wooden and metal boxes were actually developed and built by our staff. And then we placed them up on our roof. We have a variety of different things that is grown each year, but we always have sweetgrass, tobacco, and sage that is grown up on our rooftop garden. And these are just some images of our youth participating in it. It's all nutritious food that goes directly back into programming and for the tenants here. We also, with our sage, we will dry it out and bundle it, and then we will give it out to the community or have it available because we often have folks coming in who are looking for sage or a shell and would like to smudge. And it's really just, that connection with healing and with nature, lots of family activities and just opportunities for our youth to learn about gardening and about food sovereignty and about nutritious food and how to utilize that. When I remember one of the very first times with doing like a recipe from the garden early on, we made kale smoothies, and all of the kids were like, absolutely not. I'm not trying that. No, I've never had kale before. But it was so cute to provide them with this opportunity to experience something different. And our children's staff at that time, she's really into gardening, just had a green thumb, loved it, loved learning about plants and different herbs and stuff. And so she added some strawberries from our garden into that as well. And now it is one of the biggest, absolutely love. But I'll tell you, the first time they made it, none of them wanted to try it. And then they went around to all the staff offices and offered little samples in cups to staff to try it. And then also they brought it up to their families and stuff. But I just always find it, a lot of times they don't necessarily haven't been exposed to healthy and nutritious foods or have lack of access. We're downtown. It's a concrete jungle down here in Duluth. The nearest grocery store is several miles away. And just the cost in general of buying nutritious vegetables and fruits is so high that a lot of people can't afford it. And so we implemented these urban gardens to start supplementing and providing new experiences for our families and our youth, especially in programming. And our youth are the ones who run it now. They are the ones who run the whole program and really tend and care for it, and really take an active ownership in it. Next slide, please. So in the winter months, we still do arrow gardens within the building. And we started this during the pandemic too. And so we bought these large arrow gardens and placed them in the common areas of the lobby, the children's room. And then we also purchased additional smaller arrow gardens. So staff could have them in their office if they wanted and grow their own different herbs. But then we also took a poll or an inventory of any tenants that were interested in learning how to arrow garden and create their own arrow gardens in their units. So this is really exciting because we continue to grow throughout the winter and be able to, just have nature within the building for people to see and to utilize and take what they need from it. Next slide, please. So AICHO is really invested in giving back to the community. So investing in small Indigenous businesses. Our social enterprise, we have 2 social enterprise projects. One is the Indigenous First Gift Shop, which is on site here in our Gimaajii building. We also have an on-site, they sell online and can ship anywhere. And we started working with about 7 Indigenous and BIPOC artists when we first started looking at arts and culture. And now we work with over 180 artists, authors, food producers, and entrepreneurs to showcase their artwork in our gift shop. The artists get 80% of, so if let's say they sell a painting, we sell a painting in the gift shop, they get 80%, and then we take 20% to go back into programming. And we do help with some of the startup costs as needed for artists or entrepreneurs. So if somebody can't afford to get canvases and paint, we'll help do small loans or small grants, sorry, not loans, because they don't have to pay it back, to help them get started. And this was a big push because we started to see so many, there's never been a place for BIPOC or Indigenous community members to showcase their artwork in our area. And not just to showcase it, but to have an avenue to earn income and to share. And so we started the gift shop as we're really, really small. And like I said, a handful of artists. And it's grown tremendously to the point now where we've had to widen the space of the gift shop, move it to also online. And we did that during the pandemic because we closed our doors as well. And then we purchased, it's called CPL Imaging currently, but it's a print production company. Last year, we bought the company and they make all of the prints and canvases for our gift shop. And so we purchased that to start doing some job training and really investing back into our community, providing opportunities for job training and education. and then using that, both of those social enterprises together. We do a lot of work around food security, not just within the Gimaajii programming, but when the pandemic hit, we had been doing food support boxes for all of our AICHO participants and some of our community elders that we knew were struggling, especially getting the word out there with all of the information that was changing during the pandemic, getting that information out to the community members, to those that were the most vulnerable in the community. And we know that Indigenous and BIPOC folks were disproportionate. And so we started doing emergency food support. And then we were approached by a few different funders and asked if we would do a larger food distribution program. And I think I have this towards the end, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. But so we did start doing that, and we did that for 2.5 years, providing food. AICHO is really a place that provides a foundation or a platform to bring in cultural knowledge holders and leaders and to share that with the community. All of our spaces are really designed to be healing and to be comforting and to be welcoming and inviting. Next slide, please. So this is the Indigenous First gift shop that I had mentioned. 80% of the profit goes back to the vendors and helps to build the local economy. These are just a few images of it, but we have everything from different food to books to apparel to jewelry, everything on site here. Again, you can check it out. You just search Indigenous First online and it'll pop up and you can see all of the products and stuff that we have available as well there. Or if you're ever in the area, please come into the building and shop or just look around. Next slide, please. I will mention also with the gift shop, part of the social enterprise was really to provide opportunities for job training as well for Gimaajii tenants. And so a lot of times, providing them with some opportunities to build some job skills and to, build their resume and get into the employment field. So we have had several participants or tenants who have done short-term job training within the gift shop, or we've had them work within our health equity work with the Department of Health, as well as our emergency food distribution. And a couple of them have, done some job training and then moved into actual full-time positions here at AICHO. This is our COVID response. So as I had mentioned, we are on our 6th grant agreement with the Minnesota Department of Health to provide COVID response to the community. So testing, actual testing, as well as education on testing and isolation and quarantine, vaccine clinics that we do twice a month here. We also do, we'll do a clinic out in the community as well, and we offer incentives to this partnership. So right now we're able to offer a $100 gift card for every person that comes in and gets vaccinated during one of our clinics, providing emergency food distribution. So we ended that in June. That was when our funding for the emergency food distribution ended. But as I mentioned, we did that for 2.5 years. And then we still provide masks, PPE, and testing kits to all of our staff, tenants, and any visitors that come in. They just have to ask at the front desk. Or we have at each entrance, we have masks out and hand sanitizer. And then if they need a test, each community member can take up to 5 at a time. This upper picture is me and one of our elders in the community. So I used to do also the MDH. I used to coordinate that program, and I would run all the vaccine clinics here as well. So lots of hats, which I'm sure everyone knows we wear lots of hats in the nonprofit world. Next slide, please. So this was our COVID emergency food distribution. What we were able to do is secure enough funding so that we could Every other week, we would do 200 food bags, which included both, like, excuse me, I'm blanking on my words today. We had frozen meats that we purchased in bulk, so like chicken and bison, hamburger meat, and then we would do fresh fruits and veggies, as well as like canned boxed goods as well. And we really tried to focus on indigenous foods, so we bought in bulk things like jam and wild rice and pancake mix, syrup and things like that, because we really wanted it to be rich and nutritious food that we're giving out, not a bunch of processed food. And so every other week we gave out 200 food bags, and we did it right outside of a building that we purchased in the central hillside of Duluth. It was formerly a grocery store, and it had been closed down for a long time. And so the opportunity presented itself in around 2017, and AICHO purchased the building. And then we ran food distribution out of there and a lot of community events to kind of see what did the community want? What do they see this building being? And our goal is to turn it into an indigenous food market, as well as a coffee shop and other community space for people to gather. And so that is on our list of developments that we are looking at for next year. We're going to finish our development with our new expansion of our shelter, and then we'll move on to the indigenous food market. But we would just set up tables outside if weather permitted and have the bags ready. We didn't have any forms, verifications, no barriers to people being able to access food. They didn't have to show an ID or fill out a survey. They could just come up and grab what they needed. And a lot of times folks would be coming from the surrounding area and we're picking up for 2 or 3 families that didn't have the ability to get there. And then in the alternating weeks, what we did is we created anywhere from 150 to 175 food bags for our unsheltered relatives. And so those food bags were specific to what our unsheltered relatives would need. Updated information related to the pandemic, things that they didn't have to have a stove or a microwave to eat, protein shakes, kind of grab and go stuff, as well as different personal protective equipment, and then hygiene things as well. And so we would create all the bags in that alternating week, and then we worked with 4 different agencies who did direct street outreach, and they would go out and deliver those to the encampments, and they would be able to find our unsheltered relatives to deliver a bag to them every other week as well. Next slide, please. So I've talked a lot throughout this webinar. AICHO incorporates arts and culture into every aspect of our programming, really to ensure a sense of belonging, but really to preserve our arts and culture, and to showcase and have a place that the community can come and gather and share and learn from one another. And we are very open to bringing in other community members or dominant culture to come in and learn from us, because we really do have the solutions to a lot of the issues that our community members face. And our voice is getting stronger. And so we really welcome the conversation for them to learn from us directly. What is it we need? And what are the barriers for our community members to access? Next slide, please. So this was our middle and high school program that I mentioned throughout the webinar, our Win Together We Grow youth program. We partner with Yes Duluth for some of the youth. So they go through the Yes Duluth program, and they get paid through Yes Duluth for their time, whether that's going on field trips or product making or doing pop-up markets. And then we also, through our funding sources with Blue Cross Blue Shield, as well as Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College offered us a grant. We pay each of our youth stipends based on the hours that they work and the mentorship activities that they do with our younger youth in programming. So it's really primarily focused on BIPOC youth and working with BIPOC entrepreneurs. And so we collaborate with entrepreneurs and small businesses in both Duluth and the surrounding area. and then they get to participate and go on different field trips. So these are just a couple images. The bottom left corner, this is a food producer called Native Wise, which is out in Cloquet. And they have a bison farm, as well as do wild racing and stuff like that. So our youth go out there usually about 3 to 4 times a year for different activities, or berry picking and things like that. You'll see the upper corner photo. That's one of our youth berry picking this past year. And then just a lot of, working on product development to sell at the farmers markets. Next slide, please. So this is just our farmers markets. Every year we actually, well, I shouldn't say every year. The last few years we have been doing Indigenous food and art markets. So we put a call out to food producers and artists and ask if they want to vendor at our markets. This past year we did we did 4 markets. Last year we did one every other week, which got to be really, really difficult, not just for staff, but for vendors. But we usually have anywhere from 20 to 35 vendors that come in. We rent out the space and we help provide canopies or startup costs for vendors. If they don't have a canopy or if they don't have a table that's easily transportable, or maybe signage for their table, we can help with small mini grants as well. And then we do interactive cultural activities at every different market. Usually we do an opening drum song, and then we've pulled in, doing wild race knockers at different events. Every year it's different. We'll have music, or we might have a live demo from an artist or a food demonstration. We do accept SNAP benefits as well. And so we work with Hunger Solutions. And so we do a match. So for every $10 somebody spends in their SNAP benefits, we give them an additional $20 back as well. So they get $10 in fresh produce bucks and then $10 in market bucks. So their $10 turns into $30 that can be used at our markets. And it's just a great opportunity for AICHO to engage with the community, but then the community to come in and meet the artists and food producers and help support them and their businesses. Last year, Essentia Health donated $50,000 to us for these markets, specifically to expand them and to expand our capacity of how many vendors that we could accept. Next slide, please. And I think I'm getting close to the end here. I do want to save some time for any questions. Oh, that is the end. So I do want to save some time for questions, or if there's specific areas of programming that folks have questions on, I want to leave it open. And I haven't seen the chat at all, so I'm not sure if there was anything in there.
Once again, if you have any questions, you can either put them into the chat box or you can type them into the Q&A. As well as if you click the little hand icon at the bottom of your menu, it'll pop up for us and we'll be able to unmute you so you can answer live, or so you can ask your questions live.
Information in the chat. I realize I did not list that anywhere on the slides. So if there are certain things or aspects of programming that you'd like to learn more about, or you didn't hear enough about, or you just had any questions, you can always feel free to reach out to me after. Or if you're going to be around this area and you want to stop by. It was really a pleasure to be able to share with you about our Gimaajii program and aspects of all the different programming that we have here at AICHO as well.
Thank you, Daryl. Before we end the session, I want to let you all know that there will be an eval popping up once Zoom closes. We'd love to hear what you thought, so if you're able to fill that out, we'd very much appreciate it. As a reminder, this webinar was recorded and will be uploaded onto Redwind's YouTube channel within the next few days. You can also find previous recordings there. In closing, I'd like to thank our presenter, Daryl, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you all stay safe, and I hope to see you at the next webinar.